A couple of years ago when the Dungeons & Dragons Essentials Kit came out, I was pretty positive about it and couldn't see a reason anyone would really want to buy the old starter set anymore. However, since then, I've really changed my tune and realized the decision is not such an easy one. In this video, I hope to give a noob-friendly look at what's in each of these boxes to help you decide which one you might want to buy, or if you do buy both, how you might use them. Let's do it. Experienced dungeon masters know that published D&D adventures like the ones in these two boxes can't provide everything you need. Maybe your players go off the path of the adventure, and you find you all of a sudden need to describe a new tavern, or an old farmer you just made up, or a smithy. In these situations, Describe, the sponsor for this video, is the perfect tool. Go to describe.com and check out the rich descriptions of all sorts of places, monsters, spells, characters, and items. Additionally, sometimes these books mention things but don't really give good descriptions for them. Describe is great for that too. You'll sound polished, prepared, and ready to paint vivid pictures of scenes for your players, no matter how they surprise you. Go check it out and use the code WASD20 for a nice discount. Now, before we get into the differences and similarities between these two sets, I think it's worth talking about why you might even want to get one of these box sets versus just jumping right into the Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, etc. First thing is the price. You're going to pay $25 or $20 at retail for these, or sometimes on Amazon more like $10 or $15. Versus the core books, which are $30 to $50 each. But that's not even the main reason. For me, the main reason really is the approachability. The Player's Handbook is daunting for a new player, and it can feel really overwhelming. So these boxes just make things a little more digestible and easy to jump into for new players. The rulebook is condensed quite a bit, and really importantly for me, they come with starter adventures, so you're not having to homebrew your own thing. There are many new players who could do that just fine. Personally, when I had no feeling for what the game should be, I just found that too overwhelming, and I wanted a guided adventure from the first time playing. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some of the similarities and differences between these. On the surface, if you're looking at the contents of the Essentials Kit, it's no contest with the starter set. There's just way more stuff in here, and it's only like $3 to $5 more. You do get a rulebook. The rulebook does include rules for character creation, unlike the starter set, which just comes with some pre-generated characters. Just like in the starter set, you get an introductory adventure, and they're about the same size. In the Essentials Kit, you get a double-sided poster map, which is actually really cool. I like that a lot. You get 6 blank character sheets rather than the pre-generated characters. You get 11 polyhedral dice as opposed to the 6 game dice. I mean, come on, starter set, at least give us 7 so we get 2d10 to make our percentile rolls. But yeah, the 11 dice are really nice, especially when you consider character creation using 4d6 and dropping the lowest, and rolling with advantage or disadvantage, having 2d20s is really handy. Additionally, you get a Dungeon Master screen. Yes, it's flimsy, definitely on the cheap side, but when you consider the price of the box, it's nice just to get something. Now, for new players, why might you want a Dungeon Master screen? Well, there are some handy rules references that can be really nice to keep right in front of you rather than having to flip through the book. But also it's really nice to be able to hide your notes. Maybe you have some miniatures or other things that you don't want your players to see at the table. And the set does come with 81 cards describing various things, really handy references. Now, these cards do come on sheets that you have to tear apart, then you assemble the box and you can put them in the box. But in my opinion, these are a great inclusion. So you have some cards for sidekicks, which we'll talk about in a minute here. You get these step-by-step combat cards. These, I think, are really handy for the new Dungeon Master and for players too. You get some initiative cards, which I don't think I would really ever use. You get these condition cards, which I think are really handy. So if a player is restrained or stunned or whatever, you can just hand them one of these cards. You get a bunch of magic item cards so that when your player characters find new loot, you can hand them a card for that rather than just having to describe it to them and having them write it on their character sheet. And lastly, you get some quest cards because the game relies on lots of quests on a job board. When players take a quest, it's nice to be able to actually hand them the card. So there are a lot of extras there over the starter set, which only includes the 64-page adventure book, the 32-page rule book, 5 pre-generated characters, each with a character sheet and supporting reference material, and 6 game dice. Oh, and of course you get this nice little cardboard filler, which can operate as a dice tray, but mostly it's to hide the fact that you have a big empty box and the stuff doesn't rattle around so much. Does it sound like I'm ragging on the starter set a little bit? Because I am. Here's the thing though. The one thing that makes this worth the cost of entry is the adventure, in my opinion. I really just have come to like the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure so much better than the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak. Now, many of you in my review of the Essentials Kit did point out it seems kind of like the Essentials Kit is a bit of an expansion on the starter set. And I would actually agree with that. I think that is the way they intended it. I didn't really see that at the time, but now I definitely do. The starter set has a more coherent, linear adventure, whereas the Essentials Kit feels like a collection of side quests. It expands on the town of Phandalin, which is cool. The focal point of the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak is really the job board in Phandalin. Players get to pick from a number of quests on the job board, and that forms the basis of the adventure itself. On the surface, this looked cool. I like the idea of a sandbox adventure, where it's not so linear, and there's more choice. And there is something really cool about players being able to look at the map and say, I want to go here, I want to do this job, I want to do that job. But the downside is, first off, I thought some of the quests were actually kind of lame. Some of them are super bare bones, just one page, and certainly wouldn't be enough to make up an entire game session. And then the other downside is that the jobs just seem kind of loosely related to the main quest line here, and it's harder to get a real sense of this ongoing, really cool narrative that you can dive into. A lot of the early quests are just fetch quests where you're going out to warn this person about the presence of a white dragon, and then you're going out to warn this person about the presence of a white dragon. So they're loosely related, and they just don't really have the same epic feel that, in my opinion, a lot of the storyline in Lost Mine of Phandelver has. So that's really my main gripe with the Essentials Kit, but if you view it as an expansion on the starter set, then I think you add more value. You're fleshing out the town of Phandalin and expanding on it, providing lots of cool little side quests. Well, cool is debatable, I guess. Now, the nature of the quests in Dragon of Ice Spire Peak do have some advantages as well. If you're looking to play D&D in a more episodic manner, where maybe you're mixing in different players for different sessions, I think the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, these little kind of side quests on the job board, really do lend themselves well to that style of play. The other advantage of the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak and the Essentials Kit is that it is made to be played with 2 to 6 players. Now that could mean 1 Dungeon Master and 1 player. So that's pretty cool. Yes, you can do that with a starter set. You can adjust the adventure in such a way to make that happen, but for a new Dungeon Master, I think that's going to be a challenge for sure. The Essentials Kit comes with rules for sidekicks so that if you do only have 1 player and 1 Dungeon Master, at least that 1 player can have a sidekick. So that's a really welcome addition that I think will be useful. And then the quests themselves all have notes about how to adjust them depending on the number of players you have. So if you have a steady group of 1 Dungeon Master and 3 to 5 players, and you're going to be playing consistently, I would say get the starter set. I think you're going to enjoy the adventure more. But if you have a little bit more sporadic attendance, or a smaller group where you have 1 Dungeon Master and 1 or 2 players, then I might recommend the adventure in the Essentials Kit. If you are running Lost Mine of Phandelver and you're thinking about expanding it and giving yourself more options for quests, fleshing out the town of Phandalin a little bit, then I would say you might want to look into it, especially since you also get another set of dice and a bunch of these handy cards and a Dungeon Master screen. These are things that are going to be handy even if you go off and start running your own adventures at some point. So to wrap things up here, I think the Essentials Kit is an overall better product, but I just really like the adventure, the Lost Mine of Phandelver, that comes with the starter set. It's more of a traditional Dungeons & Dragons linear adventure that is going to give you a really good feel for the game and includes a lot of the basics, and I think your group can have a lot of fun with it. I'll also note that I do have a buyer's guide that I put out before the Essentials Kit came out. I'll put a link to my website written buyer's guide down in the video description, and I'll put a link to the video version up at the top there. If you have any feedback for me, any thoughts on these products from your experience, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And before we go, I do want to thank the WASD20 patrons. Patrons are people who support the channel on a monthly basis. I could not do what I do without them, so thank you so much, patrons. Patrons also get some great rewards, things like weekly live map drawing streams with me and access to campaign diaries for my ongoing D&D campaigns. Right now we're playing Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden every other Monday night, so check it all out over at patreon.com/WASD20. Well, that's going to do it for this one, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. You'll see me again very soon.